Chris Cuomo here. Thank you for joining me on NewsNation. Israel is now in a three-front war. What will America do? What will she not do? How will it be addressed? These are the fundamental questions. And yes, I know we're an hour away from the vice presidential debate, and we're going to cover it, and we're going to have people after it, and I'm going to talk about what could happen during it in this hour. But be very clear. Everything changed today. It's no longer about Israel beating up on Hamas, which is an impossible problem to solve, right? You can't stomp out terror. It's an idea, not a population. Hezbollah is a much more linear war. Going in on the ground in Lebanon was inevitable. It's happening right now. What was not inevitable is what Iran did. And the media is filled with people talking about Iran as if they were reacting by sending 200 ballistic missiles. Iran is Hamas. Iran is Hezbollah. Iran isn't reacting, it's forcing, as it has from the beginning, through its proxies. Who wants to kill Donald Trump? Iran. Who would be behind whatever bad things terror-related happens here? Iran. So the idea that the media are giving the head of the snake cover, saying why Iran says it's doing this. So if someone says they're doing something for reasons that make no sense, is that fair say? Certainly not here, it isn't. Now, the idea that, well, it's not like they hit anywhere. Really? 200 ballistic missiles. Yes, intercepted by the Iron Dome. But some did land, and it's only a matter of time. Central and southern parts of the country got hit, and the more missiles they send, the better a chance that something's going to happen and kill in a population center in Israel. And that will escalate the war. It is real. It is talk. Where are our leaders? Will we hear anything tonight? Here's what they need to respond to from the Prime Minister of Israel.
This evening, Iran again attacked Israel with hundreds of missiles. This attack failed. Iran made a big mistake, and it will pay for it. The regime in Tehran does not understand our determination to defend ourselves and to exact a price from our enemies.
What does exact a price mean? What part of that will America be a part of? What part of that will America say is too much? What will America say, period? Now, here's how I want to cover it. I want to start in Tel Aviv, what the experience is on the ground in Israel. I then want to go to Lebanon, because I can't take you to Iran. They're not letting any media in there. And I'm going to bring in experts to kind of talk about what it means for America. But I want you to get a present sense impression from two of the fronts in this war, okay? In Tel Aviv, we have the man behind the social media movement, I'm That Jew, who's really, at the end of the day, a citizen who's now living in a war zone. Eitan Chiriyat. It's good to have you again. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see you safe. What has it been like since the escalation today? Were you aware of Iran sending the missiles? Tell us about it.
I'll tell you what happened, Chris. First of all, thank you for having me on the show, and I really appreciate being given the platform. I was at the shopping mall with my 9-year-old son, and we were just walking around, and then my 95-year-old grandfather, who I mentioned the other day to you, calls me. And usually he calls to say hello, but this time he said, Eitan, where are you? And I told him, and he said, I think you should go home. I checked my phone, and there was an imminent threat. We went home quickly. We prepared our kids' dinner. We told them that it might be a bit of a eventful evening. And then at some stage, our phones started going off because we were getting warnings from the municipality, from the IDF, from the police authorities to get into shelter. Now, I don't know if your viewers know this, but these ballistic missiles are not similar to, by Iran, the Iranian regime, are not similar to the rockets from Hamas. They're 25 to 30 meters with around 1,000 kilograms of explosives. These are ballistic missiles. We had 12 minutes warning. We don't have a bomb shelter. We have a stairwell which we stay in. All the neighbors came, children, the dogs, the cats, and our phones were going off, and every 12 minutes, another one and another one. And the thing that was different about this attack was, with ballistic missiles and Iron Dome shooting them down, and Chetz, which is another technology, I believe, as well, the sound and the vibration in the air was
very
scary.
Different. Yeah.
Very different and relentless, and very, very, very scary for children. Try and explain to a 9-year-old, as my friend posted on social media, actually, how to explain that they're being bombed by a country that she's not even aware of. Mm-hmm. So it was scary.
What is the reality for you in understanding that this is now a new and ramped up phase? It's not just on the ground in Lebanon, but your leadership is saying that they are at war with Iran now. This won't be one and done. What does that mean to you?
Well, I want to answer the question a little bit differently. Can you see my shirt?
Yes, the Chai sign. To life.
The Chai sign. Life. So good. Well, I told you were a mensch. Listen, Chai means life. And the Jewish people celebrate life. That means we live. That means we create. That means we thrive in all sorts of fields. We are not dedicated to death. So when you say that it's been ramped up, yes, it's been ramped up, Chris, but we have been on the receiving end of death from the Iranian regime through Hezbollah in Lebanon with almost 11,000 rockets since October 8th, unprovoked. We've been in a 75-year existential fight for our lives every day. Mm-hmm. And it's the Jewish people as well and Israel. So what do I feel about it being ramped up? Look, it's scary, but if someone told you that their agenda was to wipe them out, would you lend them a hand by not doing anything? It might feel hopeless, but I'm full of life, and we are all full of life. We are hopeful with the smallest nation, with the largest family. They might have the numbers, but we have the truth and we have life. And so we are going to be resilient. We are going to stay strong. We're going to lean into each other as a country and as a people, and with our allies, people who speak the truth. And listen, whatever is worthwhile cannot be destroyed. And that's the Jewish people and Israel, who are one and the same. Whatever is good and right must be defended. But what is evil and radical Islam, which is at the head of all of this with the Iranian regime, is evil. They believe in death. We are going to get through it. We are in a situation where it's scary, but we are resilient and we believe in life. Am Yisrael Chai means the people of Israel live, but it's also the Jewish nation, and it's also the values of the Jewish people, which are Judeo-Christian values, mm-hmm. which the West lives. So when we keep saying that this is not a war on Israel, that's a war on the West, that's what this is. This
right.
was approximately 200 ballistic missiles that were indiscriminately fired at the entire country. So one might have criticism of Israel and policy, but that's not the way we operate, because we don't believe in that way.
I understand what you're saying. I understand it, Eitan. I get it. I want to give you a chance to put it out there. The holidays are coming. This is going to be a highly charged time, and we are absolutely in a new phase, and this probably gets more intense, not less. And we will see it through, and we will be in touch. Stay safe. Best to you and your family.
One more thing.
Yes.
I have to say one more thing, Chris. I'm sorry that I'm being rude.
No, go ahead.
We still have around 100 hostages.
Right.
Okay, and we need to talk about them. And Shana Tova Umetuka, Chag Sameach, we'll be dipping our apples in honey and celebrating a new year, a healthier new year, a good new year, a peaceful new year with people who want peace, for all good people in the world. Am Yisrael Chai, and keep living, Chris.
All right, thank you very much. Shana Tova is what we say on Rosh Hashanah. It is the new year, but we are stuck in a period here, and what is going to be new is going to be very intense for a long time. We'll keep checking in there, but also the problem is the idea of a military solution is very fleeting and very limited. It is impossible to see how Israel can bomb its way out of this situation. And yet that's what's happening in Gaza, and that's what's happening in Lebanon now, a new front in the war. And yes, they're targeting Hezbollah, but the idea that they will only impact Hezbollah is irrational. Of course, you're going to see massive civilian casualties. 30 villages in the south are now being evacuated okay, for what Israel is calling targeted ground raids. But the idea that you only kill the bad guys, we know, is impossible. So let's bring in someone who is living the reality in Beirut, a friend of mine who you know, Arwa Damon, in Beirut, excellent journalist, but now the founder of INARA, the International Network for Aid, Relief, and Assistance. She is helping the people that we all say we care about, no matter how you see the politics, those who are innocent and are now injured. Arwa, it's good to see you. I'm happy that you're safe. Tell us what the situation is on the ground.
I mean, it's a nightmare, Chris, because according to the Lebanese government, you have around 1 million people who have already been displaced, and that was before those most recent evacuation orders that you were talking about. And of course, everyone here has seen what has been happening in Gaza, and they fear that the exact same thing is going to be happening in Lebanon. You know, even though Israel says it's going to launch a limited incursion, that it's only going to be around 10 kilometers, you know, people have heard this before, because back in 1982, when the Knesset approved a limited incursion into Lebanon, the then Minister of Defense, Ariel Sharon, ended up on the outskirts of Beirut, and Israel occupied Lebanese lands up until around, you know, the year 2000. And it was actually that incursion back in 1982 that really led to the rise of Hezbollah. The Lebanese population is also very well aware of what's known as the Dahiya Doctrine, named for the Beirut southern suburb of Dahiya, which is Hezbollah's stronghold here. It's where, you know, Hassan Nasrallah was killed. And this doctrine effectively prescribes causing widespread destruction and harm to civilians in an effort to try to turn the civilian population against the entity that Israel is trying to fight against. They're also hypersensitive to the fact, Chris, that despite the fact that Gazans have live streamed their own slaughter, nothing has really changed for them. And so the reaction here is, you know, who is actually going to protect us and where do we go?
So, Arwa, now help us understand, having lived this and seen the politics play out and the kind of fruitlessness of any military situation, Iran choosing to fire ballistic missiles at Israel. How do you read that in terms of what is to come and what it means for the United States decision chain?
Look, you know, on the one hand, people here will say, you know, Iran had to do something. It had to respond to the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. It had to respond to the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah. And so to a certain degree, it was expected that Iran would do something. I think that they're also, you know, at least in a country like Lebanon, there was a certain measure of relief that those ballistic missiles did not cause any deaths, because everyone knows
who pays the price.
Exactly, that when Israel is hit, even if there are no or very limited casualties, you know, Israel fires back not tenfold, but 100-fold. And so the perspective from the region is actually that Iran is being measured to a certain degree in its responses to what it is calling Israeli aggression. But the great fear is, what is Israel going to do next? Because if anything is to go by from what we've seen since October 7th, a lot of Israel's actions have really been driven by, you know, bloodlust and revenge. That's very much the perspective on the ground here. And so people are extraordinarily fearful. They don't know what's going to be happening next. There's, you know, a huge shortage of, you know, humanitarian supplies and access to your basic necessities here on the ground. There's also the sense of, you know, how are we caught up in all of this insanity?
Arwa, stay safe. I wish I were there with you. I'm always a phone call away. Let us know what we need to do. And don't tell me on social media, not Arwa, I love her. Don't tell me that you care about the people here or in Gaza. Give money to her foundation if you care. INARA is doing the work on the ground. She is risking her safety and her people's safety to help the people you say you care about. INARA. If you want to help. Don't talk. Do. Arwa, stay safe. I'm a call away. I miss you and I wish you well.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, it is very hard to see people you care about caught up in a situation that makes no sense. This is about Iran. Of course they had to respond. Hamas is their proxy. Hezbollah is their proxy. That's why the Lebanese people are caught in here, the same reason the Palestinians are. So what is the United States going to do about it? And can we justify doing nothing? Let's get insight and perspective from better minds. former commanding general for the U.S. military command in the Middle East, General Joseph Votel, and a former U.S. ambassador to both Israel and Lebanon, Richard Jones. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Important to have you tonight. First of all, am I getting any of it wrong, General, in terms of why this is happening the way it is and what it means for America?
Well, no, I don't think you're not getting the big ideas wrong here. I mean, Israel is in a situation here where they have got to defend themselves. And that's what they've been doing over the last several weeks, and the actions that we've seen, starting with the pager attacks and going to the killings of Lebanese Hezbollah leaders, the targeting of launchers, has been designed to disrupt and degrade Hezbollah, and that is exactly what they have been doing over the last several weeks to try to reduce the threat to Israel on their northern border, so that they can get their people back at home. So, I get the point that there's a military aspect to this. There's certainly a humanitarian and political aspect of this, and they may not all be aligned right now, but it might take a little bit more time to actually get to that particular position.
General, quick follow. Do you believe there is a military solution to this?
Well, ultimately, all of these challenges in the Middle East and in other places have to be resolved through political policy means, and there has to be discussion. These are deep underlying issues that have been coursing through this region for decades. So ultimately, you're not going to solve the problem by just doing military operations. There will come a point at which the political the diplomatic aspects will have to kick into this, but the military plays an important role in bringing all the parties to that particular place, and I think that's a lot of what is playing out right now, especially with Israel's actions against Hezbollah.
So, Richard Jones, thank you very much for joining us. Help us get some perspective on what America means in this situation. We know there's no will here at home, whether you're left, right, or just plain old reasonable, to have American boots on the ground. There are a lot of people in the region, and they've been getting picked off, selectively, but nobody will likely call to go and join a military campaign in the region. So what does that leave America's decision chain in terms of taking on who started all this and who is motivating it, which is Iran?
Well, I mean, obviously, the administration's policy thus far has been focused on diplomacy, and they continue to call for ceasefires and so on. But you know
that Iran doesn't want that. So what is the next phase of what you do?
Iran might, in a few days, Iran might very well want it. But I think that Hezbollah and Hamas have been doing Iran's bidding.
Yes.
And they've suffered greatly for it. So they, I think, have been putting a lot of pressure on Iran to do something. And that's what I think led to this. It's not the first response, of course. They had a salvo of rockets a few days back, and Israel responded to them. And there was fear at that time that it might get out of hand, but it didn't, because both sides were a little bit wary here. And I think what Iran felt after Nasrallah was taken out, after so many others with him have been lost to their cause, they felt they had to do something again. Now, is this pushing Israel a little closer to the brink where Israel does enough something that it becomes all out? I think that's where the administration is trying to make a difference. And they did it in the first round. They told, basically Netanyahu to take a pass. They weren't injured very badly.
200 ballistic missiles. It's only a matter of time before one of them hits and changes wherever it lands.
That's just what I'm about to say, is that unfortunately today's salvo is twice as big as the one before.
Right.
And so now it's now Israel will have to do something very much more. But the role the U.S. played is helping Israel to mitigate the effects so that it's less, and despite the fact there were 200 missiles, there were no Israeli fatalities. The only fatality that I've heard reported so far was, as usual, some Palestinian guy. It could have been a lot worse. 200 ballistic missiles fired,
right.
A lot more damage, a lot more death. But the administration has been working to bring in our forces. And of course, this is not new cooperation. I was ambassador in 2006 when we did the first anti-missile joint exercise. We've been practicing for this for over 10 years, almost 20 years.
Well, General, I appreciate it very much. Richard Jones, thank you very much. General Votel, thank you very much. We'll be watching this in real time, and we'll see what our leadership has to say. Because I got to tell you, as we all know, you don't get 200 free shots at America before they do something, right? Why should you get it with Israel? Why is the measure, well, nobody really died, nobody's really hurt, so don't do anything about it? Is that what we would do? Think about it. 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Nobody wants war. Give us a better solution. Where is the leadership? You think we're going to hear about that in the debate tonight? I got a bet for you. I'll tell you about it on the other side when we're getting ready for the coverage. Now, another big investigation that I believe we're not learning anything about, and I can't believe it doesn't have more traction. Sean Diddy Combs as an investigation is only going to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to be an exposure point of a culture that is much rumored but never understood until now. A new lawsuit. Over 100 people, including some who say they were minors at the time, are filing lawsuits against Combs or planning to, accusing him of sexual abuse, exploitation, claiming, quote, many powerful people will be exposed. Their lawyer joins us. Diddy's response, I have it. Next.
I expect that through this process, many powerful people will be exposed. Many dirty secrets will be revealed. We will pursue this matter no matter who the evidence implicates.
Is this about money or is it about truth? I don't know. Let's start talking to the people involved and then you can assess for yourself. This is regarding Sean Diddy Combs, of course, behind bars in a federal prison awaiting trial. This bundle of suits that the gentleman you just saw represents, not a class action, and there are reasons for that are about legal procedure, but this is over 100 people, 25 of whom say they were minors at the time, as young as 9, and all are about to file lawsuits claiming what? That they were sexually assaulted or sexually exploited by Sean Diddy Combs. The then 9-year-old claims he was seeking to build a career in Diddy's industry only to end up being sexually abused at their audition. A then 15-year-old says he was promised a massive career in exchange for performing oral sex on Combs. So, let's hear about the claims. I spoke to Combs' lawyer about these allegations, and I have their response. But let's understand what these are that obviously come in the wake of a federal indictment that put Combs behind bars because the judge believes that he would tamper with witnesses and he must be kept in prison. Of course, that doesn't mean you can't tamper, although everything's recorded. So, we remember the charges, right? This is a RICO case. This is about what seemed like a legitimate enterprise that was actually all housing and hiding illicit and illegal activity. Like what? A conspiracy to traffic in sex, to use drugs, to vitiate consent, meaning that people were unable to control their own actions, and that prostitution was part of it also. So let's bring in Tony Busby, that's who you were just looking at. He says that over the years, his office has received thousands of calls related to these alleged crimes, and now he's bringing these cases. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So, why isn't it a class action?
Well, a class action, of course, is when one or two people seek to represent a class of individuals. These are individuals with, different events, different times, different states, be filed in different venues. So this is not really appropriate for a class action. We have conduct here that occurred over more than 25 years. There'll be different defendants. There may be some venues sued, some corporations. So it just really isn't appropriate.
In terms of what is appropriate in circumstances like this, why aren't we hearing the names? Why aren't you disclosing who these people are?
In every sexual assault case that I file, the first thing I try to do, this is a little different, of course, but the first thing I try to do is try to resolve the case confidentially. And the reason I do that is because these are very difficult. They're very difficult for the victim. It's a rare case that the victim wants to run off and file a lawsuit and make her name heard or his name known. Usually, we try to get an apology. We try to get, this, of course, is once the justice system has run its course. This case is a little different. We're going to file each of these cases under a pseudonym, either Jane Doe or John Doe. Some states that's allowed. Some states it's not. Some states there's a balancing test. But that's how we're going to start. But I will say that every client who has agreed to have their case filed fully understands that at some point the public may know their name, and they're prepared for that. And that might be why, of the 3,200 individuals who have contacted us, that we only have 120 willing to step forward. We're going to make an effort to keep their names private. Obviously, we're going to share their names and information with the defendants that we sue. That doesn't necessarily mean they will be part of the public record, and we'll fight that battle when it comes. But I think certainly and probably many of the people that watch know that this is tough and people are mean. People can be abusive. There's a reason for the word fanatic or fan, because people who love celebrities tend to do stupid things in support of them. I can tell you in other cases I've had, and in this case already, you get all kinds of crazy threats on social media. And frankly, I don't want these people victimized twice.
But it works both ways, right? When people hear 120 people now just coming out after the indictment, it looks opportunistic as well. So how do you respond to the notion that where were these people before, and are they just chasing a check?
Yeah, that's always the defense. That's always the defense in these cases.
Sometimes it's the case also. So what do you know about these? Have you even had time to assess them?
These particular people?
Yeah, absolutely. 120, that's a lot.
We have 90 people on staff who are vetting these claims. We have another 6 former Houston police officers who are helping us vet these claims. Even before we actually step off and file the first case, we'll probably have pretty much all of our evidence packaged. That is the evidence that we can gather. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I understand that these are very tough, and these are not something that go in blindly. And this is a case that I think,
speak clearly,
because of the indictment and because of some of the other things that have happened, I think people the victims here are starting now to feel the courage to step forward. And I can tell you, there's still many people on the fence, not just victims, but also people who are witnesses, who want to be witnesses, who want to provide information, but are still a little bit scared. And I think you can understand why.
Understandable. Let me ask you 2 other things. One specific, one general. The specific one is, my understanding is that in Cassie's lawsuit, and to remind you all there, Cassie is someone who was connected as a girlfriend and an associate of Sean Diddy Combs. We then saw the video of her being assaulted by him in a hotel, something he had said didn't happen. Now, is it true that she alleges that Diddy paid $50,000 to the hotel to get the footage of what we're seeing right now? And if so, how do you understand how it came out?
These are questions beyond me. I wasn't involved in that matter, so I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Okay. Let me ask you something else. My understanding is that this is, some of these allegations at least have been going through the FBI. Why, when that is not the agency that's doing the investigation into Diddy?
Funny that you would ask that. We've had in the Deshaun Watson case, as an example, he was investigated.
The quarterback of he was on the Texans and then he got traded. Go ahead.
He was investigated by 2 different agencies within Texas, but we also got a visit from the FBI, so you'd have to ask them that.
Right, but not Deshaun Watson. I'm saying, why isn't it Homeland Security?
Your guess is as good as mine, but I can tell you that some of our people have talked to the FBI.
Okay, so I'm just asking, did they come to you or did you go to them?
This happened even before these people came to me.
Mr. Busby, I appreciate you, and it's an important part of the conversation to understand where people are coming from, because there's so much we don't know. And I appreciate you answering the questions, and I look forward to conversations going forward as the cases do and there's more meat put on the bones. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Chris, thanks.
All right, be well. 4 minutes and 30 seconds coming up. Look, got to do it that way. You're going to be hearing about things coming all different directions here. What's true, what isn't. Often process matters. How people have vetted things, why they're doing them a certain way. Diddy's counsel says they don't know who these people are. They don't know what these claims are. And it is weird to them also that it's the FBI when that's not the investigating agency. But we only know what people can show. All right, we're less than 30 minutes away talking about people who need to make a show of proof to us. These two campaigns, so close. Why? Because we're so divided. And neither side has punched through in being a clear preference. I haven't seen a race like this in such a long time. Popular vote tied up. J.D. Vance versus Walz. Nobody really votes for the VP. But can they make a case tonight that resonates? There's a war going on. Who will let you understand that they get it and they know what to do? Lara Trump is going to make the case for her side. Next. In about 30 minutes, really less, Vance versus Walz, the VP debate. Now, ordinarily, I'm not going to hype anything for you. You'd be like, all right, VP debate, do we care? Well, we did for Quayle versus Benson because of that signature line, you know, Jack Kennedy. Usually they don't matter, but this is not usual. This race is like this, okay? And this is really about two different narratives about the country and what she needs right now. So I would argue to you that the debate matters more than usual. J.D. Vance is making his debut on a national debate stage tonight. So is Walz, really, right? But let's talk about the Trump side of the campaign, all right? Trump says he's going to be doing play-by-play throughout the debate. I can't wait for that. So what is it about and what is the strategy? Let's bring in Republican National Committee co-chair Lara Trump, also the former president's daughter-in-law, of course. Good to see you. Favorability-wise, your man Walz, no way. Your man Vance has a little bit of ground to make up. He's upside down. How do you read those numbers?
Yeah, well, listen, I think that this is going to be a great night for J.D. Vance. I think that the reality, Chris, of the situation is that we're going to hear about how life could be so much better for the American people. And of course, that would be with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in the White House. You can take a look around right now at your life as an American citizen and clearly see what happens when Kamala Harris is in the White House. She's been there for 3.5 years. You have less money in your pocket. You do not have a secure southern border. It's actually the opposite of that, despite the fact she's been the border czar. Look around at your communities. You feel less safe. We have World War III nearly breaking out right now as Kamala Harris is in the White House. And it is a really scary prospect for the future of this country. You have the opposite of that, of course, with Donald Trump. And we have 4 years that prove it. And so I think you're going to hear J.D. Vance tonight talk a lot about the contrast between what Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, as the most radical far-left ticket in the history of politics, want to do to America. And why would you want to give her another chance? She's been in there for nearly 4 years, and take a look around. Or the opposite of that, of course, which is that bringing Donald Trump back will put more money in your pocket, secure our border, but give us things like peace agreements in the Middle East instead of the wars that we see breaking out everywhere. And I think that it will be a very clear contrast by the end of this debate tonight. And I think he's going to do great.
Let's talk about that last piece. I mean, I'll give you the how were you 4 years ago? I think there's a style and substance aspect to that, but it's certainly a legitimate basis. On the World War III, what's happening? That is really about what would you do to stop it? What should we listen for from J.D. Vance tonight? Not about just blaming Harris. Let's be honest. The vice president is almost like a largely ceremonial role unless, God forbid, something happens to the president. So I don't think voters are going to vote against Harris because she's been in there for 3 years. But they may not vote for her if they don't believe she can do anything in the next 4 years. What should we hear from Vance tonight about how they would stop what seems imminent in the Middle East?
Well, listen, I do think that she does require some responsibility and accountability for some of this. She's the one herself who said she was the last one in the room to decide about the Afghanistan withdrawal, which, Chris, many people could probably argue led us and started us off on the path that you've seen happen, whether it's between Russia and Ukraine, whether it's, in the Middle East. But you have to talk about the policies as well. And it is because of the bad policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You have to put her in there because she's his number 2, that we have seen what has broken out in the Middle East happen. You had their first item in the White House, the first executive order signed, shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline. Of course, that took away our energy independence as a country, but what else did it do? It enriched Iran. It allowed them to gain so much money that they had the funding for giving money to Hamas, that of course caused October 7th, for funding Hezbollah as well, and for causing this disaster that we've seen in the Middle East. And maybe it's also more so of a general nature of things in this country. Whenever our adversaries see weakness coming from the United States, they know that that is their time. That is their ability to go in and cause harm and wreak havoc around the world. There were no new wars when Donald Trump was in the White House. It was peace through strength. And he always says, if I were in there, none of this would have happened.
Well, I get it. I get that he says that, but that doesn't make it so, right? Iran has been active, and they certainly were also acting in reaction to the Abraham Accords. Not that the Abraham Accords were a bad thing, but certainly was an instigator to those who want instability in the region. What do you believe the former president, or what we'll hear from his vice presidential choice and the nominee of your party tonight, about what they would do to stop Iran?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need to make sure that there is no question that we are 100% behind our closest Middle Eastern ally in Israel. And you've heard a lot of wavering and a lot of back and forth from this current administration, and they haven't really wanted to fully commit on that. They've said a couple of that, yeah, we back Israel, but it really, Chris, we haven't really seen that.
What would Trump do? What would Trump Vance do that America's not doing now? You're going to put boots on the ground?
There was no question when Donald Trump was in the White House where America stood as it related to Israel. And look, I think you have to make sure that you take Iran's funding away. I think that you have to say whatever it is that Israel needs to do in this situation to defend themselves and to make sure that they have a future in that region is acceptable as far as the United States is concerned. But whether you're talking about the situation in the Middle East, whether you're talking about Russia and Ukraine, the reality of the situation is that you didn't see these things happen with Donald Trump in the White House. And no matter how they try to argue it on the other side, that is the truth and that is the reality. And so I think oftentimes the things for which Donald Trump is criticized, maybe his demeanor, the way he speaks or he carries himself, are the very reasons that we never saw these sort of things happen while he was in the White House. And I will continue to argue to people, you have to think about America. You have to think about your life. And sometimes you have to vote for somebody who had the policy and whose reality was better for you. And that, of course, was Donald Trump.
The 4 years ago is obviously a metric that absolutely works in elections. We'll see how people measure it, because, again, you got a style and substance thing, as you just referred to, when it comes to the former president, that he was seen as a factor also that people wanted to avoid, that fed into the last election. Let me ask you just one quick thing, then I'll let you go, and I appreciate you. Which is, I heard your father-in-law say, the former president say, when asked, do you believe that Ukraine should win the war? He didn't answer. And he said, I think the war should end. That answer didn't make any sense to me. Is that supposed to be read that he's okay if Russia wins the war with Ukraine?
Well, what you've heard from Donald Trump, Chris, is he says, I want the killing to stop. There have been so many people who have lost lives. And look, I think
was invaded. Right? You wouldn't say, I want the Middle East to stop. You'd say, I want Israel to be safe. They shouldn't have been attacked on October 7th.
Well, I also think Donald Trump is preparing to be president again. And I think he knows that he's going to have to go in there and settle things, with Vladimir Putin as part of the negotiation process. And so maybe it is not in his mind the best place to say, I want one side or the other to win. What he does want is the killing to stop. And what he does want is peace through strength. And what we did have with him in the White House was exactly that. And so I can tell you, for all the criticism this man receives, you really do have to look at his track record. The proof was in the pudding with Donald Trump. And he has said himself that before he even is inaugurated, he would have that Russia-Ukraine situation settled. And I can guarantee you we would see a lot of great movements in the Middle East. And we would like to see things like the Abraham Accords happen again instead of the nightmare that's going on over there right now.
Well, look, everybody wants peace. The question is how. Lara Trump, thank you very much for joining us as always and making the case. You're always welcome here to do so.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. To be continued. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So Yes, this is going to be the first and only VP debate. Should there be more? Of course. Should Trump have agreed to debate more? Absolutely. Why? Because that's what you're due. All right. Yes, I want them all to do a lot of interviews. I think Trump should come here. He should do something with NewsNation. We have the most available independent audience, which is going to decide this election. But these are choices they make. So they make the choice. They made it. They're debating tonight. What does Walz have to do? What does Vance have to do? What would actually move the needle? I got people with the answers. Next. Just minutes away from another moment that could matter in this election. Why? Look, you can say, J.D. Vance, Walz, I'm not voting for either of those guys. This race is so tight that it's about which side seems to get something that matters to you and seems that it's even possible that they would do something for you instead of just serving their party and the game. So, let's talk about what could move the needle and who is best acquitted, who is best suited to make that happen. Now, remember, the game is afoot, and they are spinning you before it even starts. Did you see this post on Twitter being talked about from Congressman Jack Kimball? Made it all the way into the highest echelons of the political game. It was this supposed congressman, here's a little hint, doesn't exist, putting out a tweet that seemed to be about the media bashing Vance unfairly about the debate before the debate even happened. And then this cat kept it going by saying, well, here's why I'm putting it out now, and I'm blaming my and people kept feeding off it without just Googling and seeing who's Kimball, because I'd never heard the name. Of course you never heard the name. Doesn't exist. All right? And you had people in the legitimate media going back at this guy because we're so desperate for gotcha. We keep being played for suckers because that's the game. See the game. Expose the game. Okay? Shun the game. I think that's Kevin Spacey. Anyway, let's bring in some people who get to see through the BS, who have lived it, and who now want to help the rest of us understand what matters here. Okay? The Forward Party founder, former Democratic Party presidential candidate, my friend Andrew Yang, and former Ohio State Senator, all right, one of the truth tellers in this business, Nina Turner, also a friend, and resplendent lenses on tonight. God, man, I'm jealous of those. Yang, if you had those glasses on, I would have had you on solo. So, Andrew, being on the stage, what do you think the bar is tonight for making a difference, and who do you think is better suited to make that difference?
I think J.D. Vance has a higher bar to meet, Chris, in part because people have higher expectations for him, but also there's more of a chance he might actually become president in the next 4 years because Donald Trump is 78 years old, about 20 years older than Kamala is. So people have to start sizing up J.D. Vance. Hey, am I comfortable with this guy being president? And that's certainly a lot higher bar to hit than Walz is going to have to hit tonight.
I'll tell you what, and something that people don't want to say, and I understand why, but on the God forbid level, Iran seems very intent on going after Trump. And they are clearly deciding to make their witness in the region right now. Who knows what happens here at home? Nina Turner, what is your expectation of what you need to hear from Walz tonight to get people on board with the Democratic ticket?
I think he should bring his folksiness to it, that kind of populist. He does have a proven track record in his state, something that J.D. Vance does not have. He advanced paid family medical leave in his state. He legalized recreational marijuana. I mean, the kind of bread and butter issues that people really care about. I mean, we know that people are suffering in this economy. And so he doesn't have necessarily the same burden as the vice president does, and that he is not serving with President Biden. So I think he can really drive it home. And Chris, I want to hear him talk about the poor. We did not hear that during the presidential debate. They barely touched on the economics. You got to touch on it. And I think Governor Walz can touch it in a way that Vice President Harris doesn't necessarily want to, because she's trying to navigate between throwing President Biden under the bus, but also trying to show a vision for the future.
Quick bounce question to you, which is, how do you read this race being knotted up on the popular vote? Unfamiliar territory for a Democratic candidate.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the economy. I mean, this race is really tight, as you have said, night after night. And folks have to realize that. We know that in Michigan, the leadership is sounding the alarm, saying that the vice president is underwater in Michigan. I think all roads lead back to the economy, and folks should not ever underestimate Donald J. Trump. Democrats do that at their own peril, and I see them doing that right now, and it's foolhardy.
Pocketbook politics always dominate. Andrew Yang, what do you believe to be the issue of the night? What do you think gets the most resonance?
I think it's who's going to seem more normal there, where Tim Walz kind of rose to prominence by framing J.D. Vance and the Republicans as weird and out of the mainstream. J.D. Vance is going to beg to differ tonight. So whichever one of the candidates seems like more your person you know in your town, and the other person seems ideological, and they're both going to lob that rhetoric at each other. J.D. Vance is going to call Tim Walz an extremist, and it's going to be back and forth the whole night.
Andrew Yang wears a pin, or used to wear a pin, that said math on it. Now he's got the Forward Party pin, and I always loved it because it was the right signal. Make America think, okay? What was the H for? Harder?
Yeah, think harder, man. We could use the math right about now, and the math says it's going to come down to, 50,000 voters in a few states, like Nina saying.
It's knotted up. Why? Because we have been focused on tearing each other apart. That's the reality. That is the reality. Nina Turner, you've never been about that. Andrew Yang, you fought the good fight, and I appreciate you continuing to do it with the Forward Party. You're always welcome here. Let me tell you what I think is weird, okay? As we get ready, seconds away, let them go home, let them watch the debate. I don't want them to have to own what I say. I'll tell you what's weird. 200 ballistic missiles from Iran. That is not some gas bomb. That is not an IED, okay? These things are the size of Honda Accords, and they're getting dropped on Israel. And yeah, they fought it off thanks to the Iron Dome, thanks to the weapons that America provides. But it won't last. And I'll tell you what's weird is not seeing an obsession with the people who want to lead us on what they would do about it. Not with some kind of let's go there and attack Iran. I'm not saying what to do. I'm saying it should be an obsession. And the idea that we're going to watch a debate tonight where that is not first and foremost, not just for the moderators at CBS, but for those who want to lead us. Because think about it. What threatens your and my safety and our kids right now more than what's happening over there? You think it is a coincidence that Iran, supposedly our intel services, are getting triggered by what they want to do, trying to chase after Trump? You think he's making that up? I don't. We know he isn't. How is that not an obsession for the people who want to lead us? This is war. This is not what's been happening. It's now a three-front conflict that can only get worse.